Reborn in the 1990s, the first thing I did was burn the handwritten manuscript of my book. Then, I moved out of the apartment I had been renting with Ryan Carter. In this lifetime, I didn't want to have any connection to him. Right now, he's busy dealing with the fallout of Alice May's extramarital affair. His so-called true love. He hasn't even had the chance to steal my second manuscript for Alice to plagiarize. This was my best chance to break free from them. In my previous life, I wrote countless best-selling novels for Ryan Carter. He told me he'd take care of everything. All I needed to do was focus on writing. But instead, Alice May claimed my pen name as her own and became a world-famous best-selling author. Meanwhile, I used my fortune to support Ryan Carter, Alice May, and even Alice's daughter, whom they claimed was Ryan's child. When I finally learned the truth and tried to leave, my son, Alex Carter, naively exposed my plan. He didn't want to suffer with me. Ryan locked me up and forced me to keep writing. After multiple failed attempts to escape, I gathered stacks of manuscript paper and cigarettes and set the house on fire. That was my final act of defiance. Now, gripping the thick manuscript in my hands, I felt a pang of emotion rise in my chest. Only I knew what I had endured in my past life. But I had been reborn. Trembling, I pulled a lighter from my pocket and lit the manuscript, watching as the pages curled and burned. It didn't matter. I had memorized every word of the story. The male lead of my second novel had been modeled after Ryan Carter. Ryan and I had been classmates in college, majoring in English literature in the late 1980s, which was considered prestigious at the time. Ryan was tall, handsome, and refined, the kind of man I felt I could never deserve. Though he came from a rural background, he was every girl's dream. After graduation, to my astonishment, he confessed his feelings for me. I was so overjoyed that I started a new novel that very night, pouring years of bittersweet emotions into its pages. My secret crush, my joy, my heartbreak at seeing him surrounded by other girls. A month later, that novel was unexpectedly published, and I also agreed to be Ryan's girlfriend. I thought I had achieved both career and love, but it was only the beginning of a lifelong tragedy. Shaking my head to rid myself of these painful memories, I finished burning the manuscript and walked out of the rented apartment. It was 1990. Computers were rare, and they all looked like clunky antiques. In my previous life, I'd always written by hand, and the calluses on 3 fingers of my right hand had grown so thick they were nearly deformed. My middle finger bore a deep indentation from years of writing. After Ryan and I married, he encouraged me to focus solely on my writing, promising to handle everything else. When I became pregnant, he became so busy I hardly ever saw him. I struggled through my pregnancy alone, writing even as my body ached. It was during this time that Ryan and Alice rekindled their relationship. Alice was Ryan's true love. Years earlier, she had rejected him because he came from the countryside and chose to marry someone else. After enduring domestic abuse, she met Ryan again at the magazine company where he worked, and the two rekindled their old flame. Meanwhile, I stayed home, caring for our son, Alex Carter, as he learned to walk and then drifted away from me. Slowly, he became closer to Ryan and Alice, charmed by Alice's sunny, energetic personality. To him, I was just a lonely woman shut away in a study, smoking and writing. When I discovered the truth, Alice, smug and arrogant, accused me of being the other woman, claiming I didn't deserve Ryan. She called me useless. That's when I realized my pen name had been stolen by Alice, who had taken credit for writing the novels that stemmed from my deepest emotions. Everywhere she went, she signed books and posed for photos, with Ryan and the magazine company vouching for her. Not even my editor had ever seen my face. They lived off my name and fame. My wealth was dazzling, admired by everyone, and Alice May was even hailed as a genius creator. But what could I do? I was unwilling to accept it. All of this, every painstaking word, every blistered finger, every pen that ran out of ink, was my work. They, Ryan Carter and Alice May, stole the child of my blood, sweat, and tears. And they stole Alex from me too. I begged Ryan to let me leave. He seemed willing at first, but after stepping out for a while, he returned and changed his mind. He claimed he was worried I wouldn't be able to survive on my own, but in truth, he just wanted me to keep writing. I knew then that he would never let me go. One day, while Ryan took Alice and their daughter, Emma Carter, to the hospital, I packed my belongings and Alex's, planning to escape with him. But my good son went and told his beloved Aunt Alice. The moment I was locked back in the house, I heard Alex say, "Mom, how do you think you could ever match up to Dad? If it weren't for your writing, he wouldn't care about you at all. Because of you, Aunt Alice and Emma are labeled illegitimate. And now you want me to go suffer with you? You're so selfish. Why did you even have me?" In that moment, I truly regretted everything. But perhaps the heavens thought I had suffered enough because they gave me a second chance at life. Now, I could start over. After graduating from college in my past life, I was assigned a teaching job. But before I could even report to the school, I received a notice from a magazine company about my manuscript. Ryan said my introverted personality wasn't suited to dealing with noisy children, so I never went to the school. This time, I took my job assignment form to the principal, determined to take control of my life. I told him I wanted to teach in the southernmost part of the country. My job could be exchanged with someone else. I just wanted to stay as far away from Ryan Carter as possible. The principal looked at me, puzzled by my decision, which went against what most people would choose. I smiled and told him I didn't like the cold and wanted to work in a warm place. Though he was confused, the open position was useful to him, so after thinking it over, he agreed. He said that since I had applied voluntarily, he would try to get me a spot at a better school. He mentioned that one of his old comrades was at the newly established Penn City University and suggested I pursue a master's degree there. It was an unexpected but pleasant surprise. I planned to visit the magazine company to check on the royalties from my first book. Ryan had once handed me $800, claiming it was the total payment. He'd taken my ID and remittance form to collect the money himself. Now, I wanted to see how much I was really owed. I still remembered the magazine company's address. Unsurprisingly, I saw Ryan and Alice there. A bald man was enthusiastically trying to persuade Ryan, saying, "Ryan, since your wife is Alice, have you considered joining our magazine? You could start as an associate editor. Think about it. Where else would you find a company that pays such high salaries and royalties?" Ryan nodded at Alice beside him. He probably thought Alice was the true genius behind my pen name. Alice clung to his arm, acting coy and delicate. It was sickening. Even someone like me, who once had a brain filled with romantic fantasies, found it nauseating. Alice wasn't tall, but her features were exquisite. She wore a loose-fitting blouse that somehow exuded a casual charm. Too bad she was rotten to the core. "Rachel, why are you here?" Ryan's panic was evident. "I came to check on my royalties," I replied calmly. "I need the money for something." That time, Ryan Carter hadn't started working there yet, nor had he taken control of my ID and personal documents. Glancing briefly at Alice May, who was clinging to his arm, I walked toward the bald editor. "Hello, editor," I said. "I'm Rachel Bright, the real author of Southern Grace. Could we have a word?" Ryan panicked, hastily shaking off Alice's hand and rushing over to me. "Rachel, let me explain. It's not what you think. There's nothing going on between me and Alice. I was just helping her handle something nearby. And then I remembered that Editor Wong from the magazine invited me to discuss your second book. She just tagged along." The bald editor suddenly burst into laughter. "I'm sorry. I couldn't hold it in," he said, before turning to me with a serious expression. "Miss Bright, please follow me to the VIP room." Ryan looked anxiously at me, then at Alice sitting smugly on the sofa, before reluctantly following me and the editor inside. Editor Wong meticulously explained how royalties and copyright fees were calculated, as well as some other details. Ryan interrupted, saying, "Rachel, I already know all of this. You just focus on your writing, and leave everything else to me. I'll handle it perfectly." "Oh, then you've read my second book?" I asked. "Yes," he replied, trying to steady himself. "It's excellent. Perfect for adapting into a TV series. The adaptation fee alone would be quite lucrative." I stared at him, remembering the suffocating despair of my past life. Locked in a small room, forced to write under constant surveillance, eating, sleeping, even using the bathroom, all in that same room. If I didn't meet his daily writing demands, I wouldn't be fed. Even the basic necessities were withheld. In those moments, I had wished for death. Lowering my head, I hid the murderous intent in my eyes. When Editor Wang handed me a check for 3,000 yuan, my heart eased slightly. No matter how many days were left before my job began, I now had enough to survive. Outside the magazine office, Ryan seemed torn. Rachel, Alice has some issues she needs to handle, and I can't let her go back alone. How about we both see her off? He said, mistaking my silence for compliance. To him, my love for him was boundless. After all, my novel Southern Grace even portrayed me as willing to die for him. Of course, in my past life, I could have died for him, but him letting me die? That was an entirely different matter. Forget it, Ryan, Alice said, her voice soft and pitiful. Rachel probably doesn't want you to worry about me. Love is about independence, and she might lack the confidence for that. I'll just go home alone. If people in Cloud City misunderstand, so be it. Her teary, wavering expression was so practiced that it was almost captivating. She gazed at Ryan in such a way that I silently nodded to myself. This woman was skilled. No wonder Ryan was so ensnared. You should see her off, I said indifferently. I'm going to the bookstore to buy something. I never intended to stick with Ryan anyway, so I couldn't be bothered to intervene. As Alice left with Ryan, she turned back to shoot me a smug smile. A childish provocation, but I knew the less I reacted, the more brazen she would become. I was waiting for the day she lost control. Back at the apartment, I found a new job assignment form from the principal. I was to report to Penn City in 7 days. Suppressing the surge of excitement in my chest, I bowed respectfully to the principal. I had 7 days to destroy Ryan and Alice completely. After that, I could leave with no regrets, ready to study and write. When Ryan returned that evening, he cautiously opened the door and froze when he saw me eating dinner. Rachel, I forgot I was supposed to come back and have dinner with you, he said, as if gracing me with his presence was a monumental favor. It's fine. I wasn't in a good mood today, so I burned my manuscript. I replied flatly. What? He snapped, his anger flaring before he clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay composed. I said I wasn't in a good mood. I thought my writing was garbage, I added, taunting him further. Rachel, he muttered, sitting down beside me. There's really nothing between me and Alice. You have to believe me. You're too sensitive, you've misunderstood me. If I had feelings for Alice, why would I have confessed to you? Ryan Carter tried to look deeply into my eyes, but all I cared about was finishing my meal. I bought you some cigarettes. Didn't you say you get drowsy when writing at night? Try them. They're what I use to stay awake. What nonsense. From the moment I was reborn, I decided to quit smoking. My health was terrible in my previous life. When I was locked up, I coughed day and night, tossing and turning in agony. Even banging my head against the wall didn't help. Now, in this young, healthy body, I hadn't yet developed a dependency on cigarettes, and I was determined not to touch them again. All right, if you don't have feelings for her, I said, putting down my chopsticks, then let's get married. Ryan froze, then quickly recovered. We should pick a good date for that. Don't worry about it. I'll handle everything. You just focus on your writing. I'll take care of you. I paused for a moment, pretending to think. I need to figure out what story to write next. How about a story where the heroine is betrayed by the hero and his lover, but then comes back for revenge? I was already mentally listing the characters I wanted to include in the book, but I wasn't in the best mood recently, and I worried I might not be able to write anything worthwhile. Ryan, how about you keep me company for a couple of days? I suggested. By keep me company, I meant dining and hanging out with me. Nothing more. He wasn't interested in me, and I was too focused on my revenge to care about him. Why don't you stay over tonight instead of going back to your dorm? You can sleep on the floor here. I bet Alice will be furious when she finds out, I added, smirking. For the next 2 days, Ryan spent his evenings with me after work. He watched movies with me, strolled through the streets, cooked meals, and even cleaned up. After dinner, while I read, he paced restlessly around the apartment, looking like a blindfolded donkey on a treadmill. I could imagine Alice was having a similar experience. Even someone as surrounded by admirers as Alice would find it unsettling and infuriating when her most loyal sycophant suddenly stopped catering to her. I couldn't help but laugh to myself. On the third night, after dinner, I told Ryan, I need to take care of some paperwork for my job assignment. You should stay home and rest. He hesitated, as if he wanted to say something, then closed his mouth. All right, I'm a bit tired anyway, he finally said, avoiding eye contact. I grabbed my canvas bag and headed out. The dim streetlights in the alley flickered, casting an uneasy glow, hiding in the shadows. I waited. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, Ryan emerged, dressed in a shirt bought with my royalties, sharply pressed slacks, and even a spritz of cologne. He walked briskly down the street, off to meet his true love. I followed him quietly, watching as he stopped at a public phone booth. Picking up the receiver, he dialed a number and said, "This is an editor from the magazine. May I speak with Alice?" His tone was hurried. After apologizing profusely, he hung up. Moments later, the phone rang again. I heard him laugh nervously as he explained himself, his voice filled with affection. He started talking about how much he missed her, and they made plans to meet at a hotel. Once Ryan left for the hotel, I walked over to the phone booth, dropping a coin into the slot. I redialed the number he had just called. Hello? Who's this? A gruff male voice answered. This is Alice, I said calmly, introducing myself. Are you serious? Someone else just called asking for Alice, and now you're claiming to be her too? What the hell is going on? The man snapped impatiently. Alice May is currently at a hotel with my boyfriend. I replied evenly. Do you want to come with me to see it? I extended a soulful invitation into the hot and noisy night of 1990. The man on the other end of the line seemed stuck for a moment. It took him a full minute to respond. Are you saying this is all true? Of course. If we head there now, we might even catch them in the act. Too bad I don't have a camera. Do you have one? I sighed dramatically. Only 3 days remained until I could leave, and in those 3 days, I intended to ensure these two people would never harm anyone again in this lifetime. Who do you think you're looking down on? Who doesn't have a camera? I have the best one. The man cursed under his breath before hanging up angrily. Feeling reassured, I headed to the hotel, which was just a few streets away. It was a crude, repurposed building that reeked of low standards. I waited outside, and soon enough, a tall figure came into view, running so hard he was gasping for air. Comrade, I'm the one you're looking for. Alice, he said hurriedly. I stepped forward and introduced myself quickly. The young woman at the reception desk gave us a strange look, probably wondering why a pair like us, a man and a woman checking into a room together, didn't seem to know each other. Her gaze lingered on me with barely concealed disdain. I'm not Alice May, I clarified. I'm her husband. The man next to me flung 200 yuan onto the counter with authority. Mississippi, a short woman, checked in about 20 minutes ago. Where is she? He asked directly. The young receptionist's eyes lit up at the sight of the money. She shoved the registration log toward us and muttered, Oh, my stomach hurts. I need to use the restroom. Before grabbing the money and darting away, I leaned over the log and quickly found Ryan Carter's handwriting. Of course, Ryan had used my name to check in. Does this man have a screw loose? I muttered to myself. Using my pen name for a hotel room? I'll never use that name again. It's disgusting. The tall man beside me shoved a camera into my hands. I'll kick the door open, and you take pictures, he said with confidence. He lifted his leg, ready to march forward. I gently tugged on his sleeve. Do you still want to stay with Alice? I asked softly. What nonsense are you talking about? Girl, he said, his tone indignant. If I stay with her, I might as well turn into a turtle. There's no way I'd stay with her. Listen to me. Men like your boyfriend, who can cheat once, will do it 100 times. Don't do something stupid. He seemed genuinely concerned that I might make a rash decision and chose to stay back to lecture me. All right, then listen to me. I can make sure these two never stay together, I said, already formulating my second plan. In my past life, Ryan once told me that Alice's husband had a tendency toward domestic violence. My first plan was to have him catch Alice and Ryan in the act. If he exploded in rage and started a fight, I wouldn't lose either way, no matter who got hurt. But now, seeing that this man seemed decent, I thought it would be unfair to drag him into violence. He didn't deserve to bear that burden. The man stared at me in shock. Girl, are you carrying glue with you? Are you planning to glue them together? That's absurd. But we'd both end up humiliated. His gaze instinctively drifted to the canvas bag slung over my shoulder. Since my rebirth, I'd been filled with deep resentment. But his words punctured that anger like a balloon losing air. He was right. Alice and her husband didn't belong together. I doubted this man could find anyone suitable either. Listen, I said, taking a deep breath. I carefully explained my plan to him. The man was stunned but eventually nodded in agreement, though his eyes still held a hint of confusion as he looked at me. The two of us hurried down the hallway, which reeked of dampness and was dimly lit. We stopped outside room 609, where muffled laughter from a woman could be heard inside. The man with me gave me a nod, and I signaled back, with a cigarette dangling from his lips. He raised his leg and kicked the door open before quickly stepping aside. I rushed in and started snapping photos, one after another. It wasn't long before I realized something was off. The couple inside looked stunned. Sorry, wrong room, I stammered awkwardly, backing out and even closing the door for them. I leaned against the wall, flustered. How could this be? The logbook had clearly listed room 609. Thinking it over, suddenly hit me. The numbers were flipped. It had to be room 906. The logbook must have been upside down when we looked at it. Just as I was about to head to room 906, the door to 609 opened again. The disheveled couple inside stepped out, hurriedly adjusting their clothes. The man glanced at me, then tossed me his wallet and walked away. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. What a fiasco, catching the wrong pair. I stuffed the wallet into my canvas bag and glanced up. The door to the room directly across from 609 opened, and Ryan Carter's face peeked out, nervously scanning the hallway. Quickly, I stepped back into room 609, hoping the police would arrive soon. Over here, officer, called out, pointing toward the scene. A young woman inside the room was crying and pleading with her partner to stop visiting brothels. The man callously shoved her aside, while an actor, likely hired by the man with me, began yelling accusations toward 609. Ryan casually closed the door to his own room, but I pushed it open, revealing my teary, red-rimmed eyes. Thanks to the onion in my bag, my performance was flawless. Officer, my partner is over there. He's soliciting. My room is empty. I gestured for the officers to inspect the interior. His name is Ryan Carter, I added, my voice trembling. What followed was chaos. In the end, Ryan, wearing only his boxers, and Alice May, clad in a tank top and shorts, were squatting in the hallway. Soon, the dim corridor was filled with other scantily clad men and women, all being rounded up and taken to the station. Ryan glanced at me, his eyes pleading. That look of desperation. It was familiar. I had begged him once, too. I had pleaded with him to let me go, reminding him of all I had earned for him. I had asked him to show mercy for the sake of Alex. But he hadn't been moved. He had locked me up like livestock, forcing me to lay golden eggs for him day after day. That was all in the past now. I wrapped my arms around myself, steadying my resolve. Ryan had a job, and Alice had a family. If they didn't admit to solicitation, they'd have to confess to adultery, either of which would be scandalous in 1990, and I had photos to back it all up. From the police breaking into the two of them squatting on the floor. Later, outside the station, I met up with the man who had helped me. I handed him 200 yuan from the wallet I had received earlier. Here, take this, I said. The wallet even contained a photo of the man who had given it to me. To my surprise, he was a future celebrity. Well, if you're giving it, I'll take it, he said. You don't know how much money I've wasted on people like that in the past. I never even minded it then. Looking back now, I realized how foolish I had been. With that money, I could have bought my parents a good meal. You're right, I said to the man beside me. From now on, I'll just watch those two get married. I'd love to see how that man plans to support Alice May. She spends 1,000 or 2,000 a month on cosmetics alone. Let's see if he can keep up with that. The man grinned broadly. He must have been well off. After all, owning a telephone at this time was no small feat. He went inside to negotiate terms with Alice while I squatted outside the station, waiting until nightfall. Eventually, someone from Ryan Carter's workplace arrived to pick him up. They handed him a dismissal letter before leaving. Ryan turned and saw me standing there. Rachel. Aye, he stammered. Are you okay? As long as you're all right. He started rambling, tripping over his words. Stop. I cut him off coldly. Let's go back and talk at home. I'm hungry. I stared at him, shocked at how shameless he was. He reached out to grab my hand, but I yanked it away in disgust. Ryan Carter, I said firmly. I waited here to make something clear. I don't love you anymore. I'm done with you. From now on, we go our separate ways. This is the end. I had plenty more breakup lines prepared, but this one was enough. Are you serious? He asked, his face darkening. Of course. Didn't I make myself clear enough? I replied, looking at the man I had once loved for so many years. I couldn't understand what I had ever seen in him. You're leaving me over one mistake. A mistake any man could make? What kind of man do you think you'll find? Look at you. Your face. Your qualifications. Do you even realize how many women would kill to be with me? And you think you can leave me? He was growing agitated, his gaze sweeping over me as if I were a piece of property he owned. You really have no self-awareness, do you? You can't even hold a candle to Alice, he sneered, reaching for me again. Before he could finish his rant, someone grabbed him by the back of the neck. What the hell? Ryan started, but the man beside me cut him off. I haven't even hit you yet, and you're already acting tough? You're not even good enough to shine my sister's shoes. With that, he shoved Ryan aside effortlessly. Ryan glared at me, his face twisted with rage. Rachel Bright, you'll regret this. I won't let you have it easy. His expression merged with the memory of the terrifying face he'd shown me in my previous life. 2 more days. Ryan, I said, my voice calm. In 2 days, I'll be gone. You don't scare me anymore. The man beside me laughed. Want me to break his legs for you, little sister? He asked cheerfully. I shook my head. No need. But what I didn't expect was for Ryan to storm into the magazine office and cause a scene. He claimed that Alice May was the true author of Southern Grace. The magazine staff came to me for confirmation, looking suspiciously at my hands, which had only just begun to develop calluses again from writing. They asked detailed questions about every scene in the story. And Alice, who had been released earlier, appeared holding a draft I had once written. It had been given to her by Ryan, despite me only ever showing it to him. The magazine staff sat up straight, their expressions serious. Miss Bright, we'll need you to prove you're the real author. I chuckled sarcastically. No, let Alice prove she's the author. Or better yet, let her prove I'm not. I leaned back and smiled, my voice dripping with mockery. The burden of proof lies with the claimant, doesn't it? You stole my manuscript, submitted it under your name and mailing address, I said calmly, watching Alice May as tears welled up in her eyes. She looked pitiful, the kind of fragile beauty that invited sympathy. Ryan Carter stepped in as her backup. I can vouch for it. This manuscript was written by Alice. Rachel is a thief. The staff at the magazine looked between the 3 of us, momentarily at a loss for words. Call the police, I suggested. Since Alice claims I stole her manuscript and the magazine staff can't determine the truth, let's involve the authorities. Alice and Ryan exchanged a glance before nodding in agreement. With 1 day left before I left for my new job, I found myself back at the police station. Of course, this was all part of my plan. Their claim was ridiculous, saying I stole the manuscript, copied it by hand, and submitted it as my own. But this time, I was determined to pin them to the wall of shame. Alice argued that she had always used the pen name Emily, and claimed I not only stole her manuscript but also plagiarized her pen name. I asked her directly, have you written anything else under the name Emily? No, she answered emphatically. I set my heavy canvas bag on the table and pulled out several stories I had published in various monthly magazines under the pen name Emily. No one becomes an overnight success without a foundation. Those who make it big right away are geniuses. But I'm not a genius. I got here through relentless writing. Even if my earlier works weren't spectacular, they all had potential. And it was that constant accumulation that allowed Southern Grace to become a breakout hit. I laid out more evidence, the research materials I'd used, the sources for every historical reference, and, finally, the detailed outline for the novel. Miss May, I said, why don't you present your outline and drafts? Let's compare them and see if they're identical. Alice's face turned pale. Ryan quickly chimed in. Alice doesn't need an outline. She's a genius. Writing comes naturally to her. The magazine staff chuckled at his claim. A 100.000 word bestseller without an outline, the bald editor said, glaring at Ryan. In our experience, no matter how talented a writer is, it's impossible to produce a hit novel with just a few scraps of notes. That's not talent. That's divine intervention. Another editor firmly added, the protagonist of Southern Grace reflects Rachel Bright's personality. It's not something that fits Alice May's character. A delicate woman who cries at the slightest provocation. The bald editor turned to Ryan. A week ago, when Rachel came to the office to collect her royalties, you and Miss May were both here. Why didn't either of you claim the manuscript as hers then? Could it be that you hadn't even read it and didn't know its contents? He shot me a subtle look, signaling for me to escalate things. I stepped forward. Officer, I said, I'd like to file a report. Ryan Carter and Alice May falsely accused me of plagiarism, causing significant damage to my reputation and almost losing the magazine's trust in me. By the time my third novel hit the shelves and my graduate program went on winter break, the case still hadn't gone to trial. I wasn't worried. Life in Penn City was fulfilling. I spent my days immersed in study and writing. I bought a computer, applied for an email address, and began my journey as a digital writer. For my graduate studies, I chose Western literature, collaborating with several classmates from the English department. I started translating my novels into English. My professor even promised to help me find a suitable publisher for them. Encouraged, I kept writing. By the time I completed my fifth book, I finally received the court notice for the trial. I returned to the courtroom, this time as the plaintiff, fighting for my rights. It had only been a year, but Ryan Carter looked noticeably balder, and Alice May no longer carried the same beauty. The evidence against them was irrefutable. They had fabricated and spread false claims, damaging my reputation. The severity of their actions led to a verdict. Alice was ordered to publicly apologize in the newspapers and pay me compensation for defamation. Ryan, as the instigator, received a 1-year prison sentence. It was a perfect outcome. Ryan requested to see me, and I agreed. I wanted to meet him one last time and savor the moment of his downfall. Perhaps this would teach him never to underestimate a woman. Rachel, I was wrong, he began, diving straight into an apology. Alice isn't a good woman. She's not just a shopaholic. She's a manipulative witch. She wants magazines, clothes, snacks. Who lives like that? His voice grew hoarse as he ranted. I couldn't help but think, why didn't he complain when he was spending the money I earned? Rachel, I know you truly loved me, he continued, his tone shifting. This past year, I've read Southern Grace countless times. I know now. You loved me, didn't you? He looked at me, seeking validation. When I didn't respond, he pressed on. Rachel, will you wait for me? When I get out, I'll spend the new year with you. I'll cook you breakfast and dinner. You can just focus on what you're good at. At that, I finally smiled. No, Ryan, you should go live with Alice. The two of you are a match made in hell. Wolves and tigers. Unparalleled in this world. She wouldn't allow you to have other thoughts anyway, would she? I stood up, ready to leave. You don't know, do you? I've already left this city. I'm going to write more books. And you'll see Rachel Bright's name rise to fame. Goodbye. After finishing my graduate studies, I stayed at the university as a faculty member. One of my favorite novels, a story about a strong female lead, was being adapted into a film. The director invited me to the casting session for the male lead. When I saw one of the actors auditioning, I nearly burst out laughing. It was the young man who had once tossed his wallet aside during our wrong door fiasco at the hotel. Have him audition for the cheating scene, I suggested with a smirk. I thought to myself, he's got experience. To my surprise, the film became a massive hit, catapulting him into stardom. He became a household name overnight. From then on, the director often asked me to sit in on casting sessions for my adaptations, claiming that anyone I picked would undoubtedly find success. As I gained international recognition, my writing surpassed the scope of my previous life. My stories became grander, with deeper themes and more complex world building. In my past life, I had focused on small, romantic tales. Now, I wove in elements of patriotism and societal issues. One award-winning novel even incorporated science fiction elements. I stopped limiting my imagination. In my previous life, despite earning plenty of money, my works were mostly centered on love and romance. Entertaining, but shallow. Now, my goal was cultural exploitation. My bulky CRT monitor was replaced with a sleek flat screen, then a curved screen, and eventually a multi-screen setup. I wrote tirelessly. One serialized novel became a sensation overseas, prompting countless foreign readers to start learning Chinese just to follow my updates. Wherever I held book signings, fans would share their interpretations of my characters. Some even brought my earlier works for autographs, eager to complete their collections. My contributions to cultural exchange were acknowledged by my alma mater, and when they celebrated their 100th anniversary, I received an invitation to attend. The university invited me back as an alumna to inspire the younger generation, and I agreed. Returning to the campus that had once filled my dreams, I found myself sitting with other alumni, sharing memories and catching up. I heard about what had happened to Ryan Carter. Without a steady job, Ryan couldn't afford Alice May's extravagant lifestyle. Their split was messy and public, though they didn't officially divorce. Alice left their daughter behind and ran off with a foreigner. 2 years ago, however, she returned to the country in disgrace and began fighting Ryan for the house he was living in, claiming they had never divorced when they moved abroad, and thus, the house was partially hers. Ryan doted on his daughter, Emma Carter, but his life had been marked by hardship. He worked as a temporary laborer for decades, struggling to raise Emma as both a father and a mother. It was said that he dabbled in writing, but he blamed his lack of success on not finding the right opportunities. The most absurd twist came when, after Alice returned to sue him for the house, Emma stood in court and declared she wanted to live with her mother. That was the final blow. Ryan aged overnight, losing both his home and his child. When I went to see Mouse, an old nickname for a classmate, I saw Ryan. He was drunk, disheveled, and unrecognizable. Mouse told me about Alice's true colors. After selling the house, she didn't bother to ensure her daughter had a place to stay. She took the money and vanished. Well, that's justice, I thought to myself. Truly was. Standing before the students at the university, I felt a mixture of emotions. Perhaps some of them felt out of place here, like I had once felt. Maybe they thought they weren't smart enough, wealthy enough, or physically strong enough to succeed. I wanted them to know they didn't need to worry about those things. I told them, back then, I was just like you. I spent countless lonely nights reading, studying, and writing. Those solitary hours weren't wasted. They were the foundation I built for myself. One day, when the right opportunity comes, all you need to do is seize it. Until then, focus on learning. There was so much I wanted to share with these students during the anniversary celebration. But in the end, my words distilled into a simple message: do good, and don't worry about the future.